What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another episode of Lions Latest. We're going through the latest Detroit Lions news, and today, once again, we are here to discuss Detroit Lions training camp day number 2 as we continue this ramp-up period. We had 15-minute longer practice today, which meant a little bit longer individual drills, a little bit longer in group drills, and a little bit longer in team drills. This small little ramp-up period as it leads us into open to the public, and then into the preseason, and then into the regular season. So let's get it started.
Fired up. It's made a great decision.
Great teammates, coaches, and other people who want to be Super Bowl champions. And we are. We're going to do it this year.
And we're going places because we want to go places.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here, and we're back with another training camp video. Hopefully this one is a little bit shorter because we should be able to kind of pass on some of the, overview that we had to set yesterday with kind of everything, and we can fly through some certain areas a little bit faster, and we'll focus on mainly what went down today in practice from the notes that I've gathered. Again, I was not there at practice today, so these are notes that I have gathered from different sources that were at Detroit Lions training camp, and when I am able to go to training camp, I will have my own notes for those days. However, we're also going to talk about what Dan Campbell had to say. Back-to-back pressers from Dan Campbell, did not expect that. Really didn't. I don't know if he did this last year or not, but when I saw it on my phone, it popped up and it was like, hey, Dan Campbell did his presser today. I'm like, oh snap, back-to-back pressers. This is legit. We're going to discuss that as well, but let's start off with the participation report because unfortunately we had some really bad news out of training camp, and to get something like this this early, to get this at any time is terrible. Any player, this is not something that you want to have someone deal with at this point in time. We're not in pads yet. I mean, we just got started with training camp. Everybody's excited about the season, ready to get underway. These position battles, you want everybody to have an opportunity to compete and try to prove themselves, whether that's for here or for another team. Anybody that has this training camp film, and to see that a guy goes down with an injury this early is terrible. And especially because it could be pretty serious, but I'm not going to speculate. I don't know. But if you haven't heard the news yet, Greg Bell, the Detroit Lions undrafted rookie running back out of San Diego State, was taken off today. He was helped off the field with a non-contact injury. According to DetroitLions.com, he was running an out route in 7-on-7s, and he was holding his left side. He went down with an injury, and he had to get help off. It looked like he was in some discomfort, so he decided, hey, I'm not going to use the cart. I'm going to kind of walk off, but he needed some help to walk off. So maybe we'll get an update on that soon with Dan Campbell and where that's at, but it doesn't sound great. Non-contact injuries always kind of seem the worst. So I hope it's not like that because this is just terrible for any player. And specifically when you look at Greg Bell and the situation that he's in, I got to be honest, the last time I went back and rewatched this film a few days back, I was a little bit more intrigued by this player than I was originally. I think immediately you kind of try to just turn it off and it's like, don't look at the guy. I mean, we have a good running back stable. He ain't going to make the team. But when you watch him, it's like, okay, but he does do some things a little bit differently than some of our backs. And you know what? I love the way that he plays. I love the demeanor that he plays with. And then you see some of the things that he's went through in college.
A quick little summary here. You can see doctors didn't think he'd be able to play again. He had to deal with a freak eye injury and then taking a job at a warehouse at Amazon before being put on scholarship, bouncing back like he did, and now being with an NFL team.
I mean, you start to really like the guy. And unfortunately, to have something like this pop up day number 2 of training camp without pads on in this early ramp-up period is terrible. So I'm just hoping for his sake that he's able to get back as soon as possible to continue to try to compete for this running back position battle, because this is not the way you want it to shake out. It's one thing to get cut. It's one thing to not make the roster. It's one thing to get an opportunity elsewhere. But to have it be via injury where you don't even get an opportunity to see the player would be absolutely devastating. So we'll keep an eye on that one, but this is some terrible news that we got today. I guess some good news, I guess you could point to here potentially, is that Dan Campbell did give us a little bit of clarity on some of the injuries that the Lions are currently dealing with that were on the list yesterday. So he gave us a little bit of clarification here on some of these injuries, and there have been no changes. No guys have been taken off the PUP list. No guys have been taken off the NFI list, so I will say that. However, starting off with Josh Paschal, where he probably gave us the biggest update, is we talked about it yesterday, just from a quick Google search, looking up sports hernia, how long it usually lasts, but then also seeing that if this is something that, hey, you feel better, you go out there and you try to play again, and then it re-injures itself, you're probably going to need surgery. Dan Campbell told us that Josh Paschal has already had surgery on the sports hernia. Now, I don't think we've been told this before, so I'm pretty sure this is a new update with Josh Paschal, that he's actually already had surgery on this. He didn't give us an exact date on when that took place. He said maybe late spring, early summer. So I would think safely at least a few weeks, maybe longer, that he's had surgery. So instead of being in this process of maybe trying to figure out, okay, can he come back and play? And then if it pops up again, we have to have surgery. It sounds like he's already gone through that, and right now he's just recovering and trying to get back. So to me, that's pretty exciting. I think that's good news. They're always trying to be safe with their players and be smart with their players. So I think that's actually good news to hear with Josh Paschal. And then Jason Kabinda, the fullback who popped up on here yesterday, he said that, not anything really serious here, dealing with an ankle injury, and we're just trying to be smart with it. But aside from that, there have been no changes amongst the PUP list and the NFI list. So we keep our eyes on that. Dan Skipper continues to be on this list. I was looking for that one. I know he was listed there were illness, but he continues to be on this list. So that is now the participation report for the Detroit Lions. No changes, just a couple of clarifications there aside from Greg Bell, and we'll have to keep an eye on to see what this is. I hope it's not that serious though. I actually think he answered a lot of questions for us this morning that we asked yesterday. So first off, of course, starting with the secondary, the changes of listing Will Harris as a cornerback and Ife Melifonwu as a safety. I think this is very interesting because I was speaking to Easy yesterday after I put the video up, and I was talking about how I think with Will Harris, he's more of an outside corner and he's probably going to stick there if he may show some flexibility. But I like the idea of Will Harris at cornerback because it's almost in a sort of a way, maybe like a simplified, role for him, because instead of having to be aware of everything that's going on, it's like, hey, just go cover your guy. And he's the athlete that can do that. And Dan Campbell actually hit on that, so I thought that was kind of cool.
We feel pretty good about keeping Will outside right now and just letting him compete out there, knowing that if we ever need him in the back end, he can do that. And so let him continue to grow at corner. We want to see what he can do at safety, knowing that he can swing back to corner. So he is a little bit more in play in both spots. But we certainly would like to come out of this camp and see if he can play some safety, essentially. Just trying to find the best fit for our guys and for what we have on the roster.
I mean, we've seen Will Harris at safety for years. We saw it last season. And he hasn't really been a big impactful player at safety for us. However, at cornerback, while yeah, he still has a long way to go at cornerback, I do think there was some flashes of like, oh, he can play a little bit. And I think athletically, he definitely is the type of athlete that can play cornerback. He just needs to really smooth out some rough edges, I think, in his game at cornerback, because you got to think he's raw like a rookie trying to play cornerback. In a way, he's kind of new to this position, but it also takes a little bit off your plate, as the way that Dan Campbell put it. And he said sometimes when you take stuff off a player's plate, they can excel. And in a way, they've kind of done that, because he's like, look, you can just him up your receiver. And because of this, and I think because Will Harris was in that safety role for so long, because he saw it from that perspective, he has a great feel of what's going on that he now shines from cornerback, where at safety you thought maybe he's not as instinctual as you would love, but from cornerback, I think you're seeing a guy that looks very smart. He looks very instinctual on the field, and he looks very locked into everything that's going on. He's very fluid in communication, transitions, passing routes off, that he looks like he's excelling in that area at cornerback that maybe he didn't excel at necessarily at safety. So for him, I think the responsibilities that are put on his plate from cornerback, he understands all of it. Now you're taking a little bit off his plate in that area, and you're just saying, hey, can you go match up with this receiver? And by the time you got to week 18 against Green Bay, I think you definitely saw improvement within his game, where again, it's not always perfect, and it's not going to be with cornerbacks, but at the same time, there was good reps there. And I think he's shown you that he can do pretty much everything. He just needs to really smooth out his game as a cornerback. So that's what he told us there, and except for Iffy, we want him to try to learn the safety spot. He said, we're trying to find the best spots for our players. With that said, though, he may have a little bit more flexibility of a guy that could move around than Will Harris at this point in time. But he continues to be as a safety. They listed him as a safety. He continued to take reps with the second team as a safety. They like him as a matchup piece, but they're trying to get him to learn that position, to see what they have in that player. And again, I think that also goes to what his skill set is and what the cornerback position consists of, and some of the players that you have there. You want to find a way to get him on the field. He's young. You want to continue to see that development, that growth. And if you can do that through a different position, a different outlet like safety, whether that's the third safety in sub packages, whether that's one of your, starting two deep safeties, whatever it may be, that would be awesome. We know Tracy Walker is locked up. Aside from that, you know, you got a rookie in Kirby Joseph. You have a 1-year deal in Deshaun Elliott. So there's a lot of potential for roles to be earned and won for long term here with players at that position. On to the defensive front, the front seven, which again, I said I love to look at the front seven. The way that I kind of see it, according to what Dan Campbell has said, I really just need to see it in person to see what they're doing. But it does sound like for the most part, they're moving guys all over the place. They're being flexible with their defensive players. They're putting them in different positions, guys that can handle different positions. Plus, when you don't have Romeo Okwara out there, it changes things a little bit, I would assume, because you don't know if he's going to be ready for week 1. And if he's not ready for week 1, you can't be practicing of, okay, well, what if he was ready and then not have a plan if he's not ready, right? So I think you also have to plan and prepare for that as well. But this is what he said. He said, Julian kind of last season played like the X position for them, which they said was on sub packages in passing downs. He was a guy that could rush the quarterback, and he could also drop a little bit in his own coverage. And last season, we saw that, and he was healthy, whether that was the LA Rams game, whether that was the Green Bay Packers, a guy that would rush the quarterback, line up at different spots, or you could have him drop a little bit into the flats underneath in coverage. He had a pick doing that. So that's what he said his role was last year. And he said in base, we need him to improve. And some of the things that we're putting on his plate, like run defense, some of the coverage situations that you may have to be able to do. And then also, if you're playing a run play that turns into a pass, to transition from playing the run to getting after the quarterback from that Sam backer position. So it sounds like right now they're like, hey, where he excels is sub packages. He's a very good pass rusher, and he's athletic, so he could drop into coverage. But we want to see that improvement for him to continue to work to be our Sam backer. And I thought what was really interesting about that, and he said that's something that Charles excelled at last year. That's what he said. I'm thinking this in my head because yesterday we were talking about it, right? Like, hey, what if Charles Harris could play that Sam backer position in base for the Lions? This is not like, hey, this is the only defense they're going to play and things like that. It's just from what we've been hearing. And of course, there's so many variations. You're in sub package all the time. You're going to play 3 off-ball linebacker. You're going to play 1 off-ball backer. You're going to do a lot of different things. And then what they tell us about Aiden Hutchinson, that right now in base is playing as their rush end. In sub defense, he's mixing inside, he's mixing around. And actually, Pride of Detroit gave us that update as well, that, you know, he's one of these bigger guys that have shown success from getting after the quarterback from the inside and the outside, along with guys like John Kaminsky, who I think is an interior pass rusher. So that makes sense. And also Austin Bryant. That's interesting there. So some flexibility on sub package. But on base down, he says he's our rush end right now. So I do wonder a little bit that, again, on how this could adjust and how this could change when Romeo Okwara is back. But from what he's saying right now, this is kind of what I'm picturing in my head, is you have Aiden Hutchinson on the open side defensive end, which is, you know, there's no tight end on that side. So that would be like your rush end. All right, he's outside of the offensive tackle. Next to him in your 3 tech, which we talk about all the time, would be Levi. So you have your pass rushing 3 tech next to Aiden Hutchinson, which is, I mean, heck, that could be a deadly combo if that works out. That could be deadly. Ali McNeil is your 1. He's your nose in the interior, and then on, you know, that same side, on your close side, then you could have potentially, like we were told yesterday, Michael Brockers can pop out a little bit. Well, this would be a scenario where I think when I hear pop out, move out a little bit, I'm thinking that, okay, wider than the 3 tech, well, that's, you could get out to the 5, right? And again, this is a one gap defensive scheme, but as like a 5 tech, and again, that's, you know, those can fluctuate, things like that. That could be your Michael Brockers. Then I start to wonder about, okay, well, what if Romeo Okwara is back? If Romeo Okwara comes back, do they stick with this and allow Aiden Hutchinson? Because the open end defensive end is usually he's your pass rusher. He's your elite pass rusher. He's a fantastic athlete. He's going against your blind side of the quarterback, so he's very important. That's why left tackles are paid so much, to stop guys like Aiden Hutchinson. So that's kind of like your premier pass rusher that usually plays in that position. So if there was a healthy Romeo, would they put Romeo over there and push Hutchinson potentially to that close side defensive end, and then rock with Levi and Aleem? Like, obviously you can get flexible, but that's kind of what I'm just thinking in my head. Point is, though, this is kind of what I'm picturing. And then we hear Julian and Charles Harris. Now, we've been hearing like, hey, Charles Harris may be playing some of that open end defensive end. To me, that makes sense. I think he could back up Romeo and play that role. But then I also questioned yesterday, well, could he possibly play Sam? I think he has the skill set to do so. And it sounds like, according to Dan Campbell, just with that little snip, that maybe he could, because he's saying that's something that Charles excelled in last year, was the ability to play the run. He was a great run defender for us last season. If you don't want to give him great, say good. He was a good run defender statistically even, and on film. He can contain, he can rush the quarterback, and he has fluidity enough to drop shallow underneath. Maybe not as much as Julian, but he can. So this is what I'm picturing in my head. And I'm gonna be honest, man. I'm just seeing it on paper to me gets me excited because I'm like, okay, Hutchinson next to Levi, Ali McNeil, potentially next to Romeo, potentially next to Charles. That is disgusting. And then of course your two off ball from what we're hearing is Alex Anzalone when he's out there with Chris Board, he's to Mike. And then of course when Derek Barnes is out there, he can slide to Mike, and you can put Alex Anzalone at will. One thing about Alex that they love is his flexibility. That was something coming out of the draft, but at the same time his versatility to really play every linebacker spot. And Chris Board fits the will linebacker idea and mold a lot better. But that's just kind of what I had in my head. So I'm like, all right, let me share that, just kind of what I'm thinking about this whole situation. But until I see it, I can't really say for sure. With that said, though, I also talked about interior defensive line. And he did say, you know what, we may need a little bit more girth on the interior. And he said, basically, I'm not going to lie to you, we have been thinking about that, if we may need to add a little bit more girth, because he said, look, John Pennicini could handle that in the inside, right? He could clog some run lanes, and John Pennicini was a guy that if you went to situations where you had both Aleem and Pennicini, which they did at times to stop the run, it was tough to run up the interior when those two guys were out there. So losing John Pennicini was a tough loss because there was no plan. You didn't expect it to happen. It just kind of happened, at least to us. So they didn't really have like, okay, well, when that happens, we got this guy. There was none of that. So right now they may be scrambling a little bit trying to figure out, okay, what do we have here? And today it sounds like Isaiah Buggs, who was the addition from the Pittsburgh Steelers, who we said could be the potential John Pennicini replacement. He's about 300 pounds, maybe. I'm not saying for sure he could be, though. He's gotten some reps with the second team today. Maybe they're trying to see what Isaiah Buggs can bring to the table. He brought up Isaiah Buggs specifically, and he said, look, he's did a good job for us. And if Buggs doesn't do that well, then they may continuously be on a search for, maybe we can add a little more girth up here. But he even said it, like guys like Levi. You know, obviously, I think he's talking about two different things here. Like in heavy run sets, John Pennicini's different than Levi. They're just a different build. However, he is saying that on the interior, Levi's going to have to be able to handle it with us because he's a big guy. He needs to be able to handle it. But the difference between, you know, this defensive scheme and what we did a little bit last year is that we have to be able to get on blocks quickly. We have to get off the line. We have to be explosive. We have to disrupt and get in our gaps. Otherwise, you're going to get washed on the play because you just don't have the girth or the size to hold up. So I think the size is nice for flexibility, where if you have a John Pennicini, you could be a little more flexible, different situations of what you want to do. So they may be still looking for a guy like that can back up Aleem McNeil, who we know can handle as a starter. It's more figuring out the potential backup here. And that could be Isaiah Buggs from what it sounds like. They just kind of have to wait and see what he turns into. Note I have with Dan Campbell here is he did say it would be a special opportunity to change the same old Lions thing, the whole SOL thing. He's like, yeah, I knew about that. He said, I knew when I signed here or I was hired here, I knew about this. And he said it's just a special opportunity to kind of end that whole thing.
Once you've gone through a great suffering, if you will, as it pertains to sports and Lions football, then man, that's when there's a great triumph. And to be a part of that and to be able to help it become that is, man, that's something special. I mean, that is special. So yeah, I think that motivates all of us a little bit here.
Oh my gosh, Dan, please end that. Please, I will build a statue, okay? I know they will build a statue. I will build a statue of Dan Campbell if we can end this whole craziness. I hate hearing that. Let's go into some of the observations that we were given today from a couple different Detroit Lions sources. Shout out to them. Staying on the defensive line track for a second, I guess after practice, they ran the hill. This was something that was installed with the last regime, and they ran up the hill. They did a little extra conditioning after practice. Let's talk a little bit about after practice. So I guess it was led by Brockers and Charles Harris, maybe, or maybe that's just what they're saying. But either way, the defensive line did some extra conditioning after practice, and that's where veterans come into play, right? Because they understand, especially the veterans that got that taste in their mouth, or veterans that understand winning at the highest level. Michael Brockers, he understands it. He's been there. He's done that. He knows what it takes. So if you can get some of those guys to, you know, it's different when a coach tells you to do it or something like that versus when a player, one of your guys that you play with says, hey, let's go do this. Let's put in a little bit of extra work after practice. Let's get a little bit better today. All right. And just go with me. And then it's like a competition, you know, for everybody that I've talked to. Sometimes I think in my head, well, are veterans a little overrated? They're not. Veterans are necessary, and every team understands how necessary veterans are to have within a group, within the locker room, and all of those things. Staying in that same track, the receivers, I guess, did something kind of similar after practice today. That was DJ Chark, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Khalif Raymond, and Josh Reynolds, who hit the jugs after practice, and I guess DJ Chark did it actually after his ending media press conference, which I'm like, that's pretty sweet. He put his stuff back on. He went out there and got to the jugs. What I think is cool about that is I remember last year it was kind of like, I think it was just Khalif and St. Brown. I think sometimes another guy would mix into that, but it was a smaller group. Now it's expanding. Now Josh Reynolds is here. Oh, Josh Reynolds is doing it with him. Oh, hey, DJ Chark is here. Okay, DJ Chark's getting involved with them. So now you got this larger group growing of guys after practice going, putting work. And that was a lot of the chatter today was about Jared Goff and his connection with these receivers, how the time that they spent in the offseason has helped them, putting in work in the offseason has helped that chemistry, and how they're using that in practice to continue to try to build that chemistry with some of these new weapons, because they understand J-Mo, hey, it's gonna be tough. He's gonna have to catch up a little bit. But DJ Chark, you have to have that chemistry, that trust from Jared Goff. And DJ Chark actually gave us some fantastic quotes, so I'm going to hit on those right now about playing with Jared Goff. DJ Chark said, he said, I'm getting used to the way he throws the ball. He's very consistent with the way he throws. At this point, I kind of know where to expect the ball to be. The type of passes, as in philosophy, and things like that. So I think getting a head start on it during those OTAs was very big. So he's really getting comfortable with, okay, hey, this is the route, this is where the play's designed, this is where I kind of anticipate the ball's going to be, where I need to be to the smallest little detail, right? It's all about the details, man, and we don't really get to see that as much as they do, but, you know, just how far, when you break your route, I mean, everything like that, all of the timing, the small little details that play into it, especially with Jared Goff, because I actually went back yesterday, and I'm always just watching his old games and stuff. I was watching 2018 versus Seattle. And I watched him versus Detroit because it was, you know, it was kind of like a slump there. But I watched those games, and you just see how important the timing is. The timing in every concept, every route. It's always tough because, as we say, you know, quarterback's not getting pressed off the line, receivers are. So the timing can be a little bit difficult there. But in certain philosophies and certain concepts, timing is huge. Understanding for the receiver where I expect the ball is going to be, what it's going to come out like, you know, how hard is he going to throw it, so I'm not caught off guard. All of those things in chemistry, I think, is what he's talking about here.
What here in Detroit can get you back to that success that you had then?
A lot of things. I think Jared Goff being a big one.
He continues with this about Jared Goff. He said, JG has more control of what's going on, has more input. I can go ask the same question I would ask Ben Johnson or Antoine Randall L. and go ask him. That helps a lot when I go straight to the source, the guy that's throwing the ball, just on small routes, trying to figure out what he's thinking. So when I'm lining up, I'm kind of thinking the same way. We've still got a ways to go, but just today, a few plays, I saw what he was thinking before he threw. I asked him if that's what he was thinking, and he said, yeah. Just things like that are really helpful when you have a veteran quarterback like he is. Talk about, you know, Ben Johnson allowing Jared Goff to be more involved with this offense, kind of putting this together, trying to fit it to his strengths, all of those type of things, being involved in building this offense for this season and what they want to do. And then you hear like, hey, look, I can just ask Jared Goff the same question Ben Johnson, who's the offense coordinator, and Jared Goff gives me the answer. But I think you'd rather have the situation where you ask the guy that's actually throwing you the ball, because it's the little things. Like Ben Johnson can draw it up. He sees it from a quarterback's perspective. That's why he's so beneficial. But for Goff, he's actually in that moment. He's in that situation. So the better that chemistry is, the more efficient you got to believe that it's going to be. And if Jared Goff can give you the same answers that Ben Johnson can give you, it really tells you his understanding and comfortability within the offense. Also, backup quarterbacks, I guess they're continuing to rotate. Today was David Blau's day, so I'll throw that in there as well. Now, this is a good note. Shout out to Pride of Detroit for this one. They talked about a third running back situation, and they said right now it seems like Craig Reynolds is the third running back. It's still so early, and these are going to continue to change, and preseason, all that stuff affects it. But said right now, Craig Reynolds seems to be the third running back, as when they split off in the drills, and it was Swift and Jamal, who we know are the 1 and 2. Craig Reynolds stayed with those guys. So it sounds like as of right now, the pecking order is that he's the 3. And I think just based off last year, he should come in that way. I mean, I really do. Based off what he did last year, who else would come in as a higher role? Godwin, maybe. But I think what he showed us last year is, yeah, clear he should be the number 3. And then the rest of the guys are going to battle it out and continue to fight and things like that. Plus, Craig Reynolds is apparently getting involved in some kick return, not kick returning, but as the up back in kick return situations. So he's trying to find a role there. I mean, look, I just feel like Craig Reynolds is a lock at this point. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. But I just feel like he's a lock. Staying with that, they say that for the tight end position, Brock Wright right now is kind of like the number 2 tight end, which again, I think coming into training camp, because of your new additions, were Mitchell, who is a rookie, who is also coming off an injury. Devin Funchess hasn't been here. Garrett Griffin hasn't been here. Shane Zylstra was here. So really the only 2 guys that it would be down to come into camp as the number 2 to me would be Shane Zylstra and Brock Wright. And they're saying Brock Wright right now is kind of the number 2. He's even getting some reps at H-back. And after practice, Shane Zylstra, and Garrett Griffin were all taking extra blocking reps. Well, Garrett Griffin, as we probably know, was kind of like an H-back for New Orleans. I mean, that's what he was. He wasn't much of a receiving tight end. He was more of kind of just a piece to block with. And this becomes very important if, and I hope it's not, if Cabinda's injury is something that for some reason he had to miss the beginning of the season. Now these guys become very important to allow them to continue to have that flexibility and versatility that they want to have within their offense, because guys like Garrett Griffin can be as a lead blocker and still be a useful weapon, at least to the degree that I believe Jason Cabinda was last season. So they're getting reps there. They didn't bring in James Mitchell into that conversation, or guys like Devin Funchess into that conversation. But Shane Zylstra is the interesting one to me, because I think Shane Zylstra, who's kind of more known as a receiving target, if he could bring some more as a blocker, now all of a sudden he becomes interesting. But I think he still needs to excel more in the receiving game as well, which is why they brought in the Funchesses and the James Mitchells to give you more of a receiving target at tight end, which they've made clear they needed that. They feel like they've needed that. And back to the defensive line, Jayshon Cornell is kind of like the fourth interior defensive lineman. So behind Michael Brockers, Levi, and Aleem, it continues to be Jayshon Cornell. So shout out to Jayshon Cornell. I mean, this might be one of the coolest stories if he finds a way to make the team, but not make the team. We've seen him make the team. Be impactful this season. That would be outstanding. After all of this time, to be able to come in this year and bring an impact to the table would be awesome. And I think this scheme matches what he does well. I think it does. And I think there's a place for him in it. But for him, he continues to be kind of up there, and we heard him a lot in OTAs. He continues to be up there, so keep an eye on that guy. Don't forget about him. Detroit said that Charles Harris was a starter on the outside. I don't know if they're talking about hand-the-dirt defensive end, or if they're talking about a Sam backer, or they're talking about sub package, or what they're talking about. But they're saying that Julian is also taking good reps there with Anthony Pittman and also James Houston, who are getting reps backing those guys up. So that makes me think Sam linebacker, because I don't think they're playing James Houston at defensive end. I've never heard that. I've never heard Anthony Pittman doing that. So again, I think they're talking about Sam, which is why I throw that diagram up, because that's kind of what I'm picturing in my head when they go through this. Now again, in sub package, they're saying that Chris Board is, if they're going one linebacker right now, it seems to be the preferred option. I think Malcolm Rodriguez has his name written all over that in the future, but right now it could be Chris Board, because Chris Board with Baltimore was a third down player and a special teams player. So blitzing, pass coverage, former safety, there you go. And that's what Malcolm Rodriguez also is. So I think in the future, he's got his name written all over that. One interesting note here that they made, though, is they're saying that for number 4 in terms of off-ball linebackers, Anthony Pittman is now repping that. And I thought the fact that they were playing him at Sam, see what he can do there, see what he can bring to the table. Now they're saying he's working with basically the second team as the 4th string linebacker off ball as well. Now, I think that means he's a lock to make the team. Remember, last year he did make the team, so they seem to like it based on that. The third unit is Jared Davis and Sean Dean Hamilton, which I can understand because one guy made the team. Deon Hamilton was hurt. He did do training camp and he did well, but he was hurt. He didn't play. And Jared Davis is a new addition. And with the 4th string, they have Josh Woods, which doesn't seem like a great thing for Josh Woods, considering that he did play last year against Denver, and Malcolm Rodriguez, which makes sense because he's a rookie. So keep an eye on that guy too, Anthony Pittman, okay? Hey, I'm keeping an eye on it. And finally, with the secondary, they have told us that they continue to rotate Jeff and Will. Both of them made plays. Both had pass breakups. And I'm telling you, if I continue to hear good news about Will Harris, I'm going to love it. I'm going to absolutely love it because I'm telling you, Will Harris can play some corner now. He's an athlete. And if I see him look smooth, man, I'm going to be very excited. You're gonna get up very excited, me, when I come back and start talking about this, because I'm going to be like, oh, snap. We might have to grow some excitement here with Will Harris, because I'm telling you, move his skills are there. He just needs to look a little bit more fluid, I think, based on what I saw last year. But even last year, it just seemed to get better as he played. But I don't think he's a nickel. I don't think he's a nickel, as I said in my last video. With the cornerback position, what they're saying is that Mike Hughes continues to get backup reps at slot. He's also repping a few times on the outside. On the outside, mainly, though, the guys that are backing up, going with the second team. Yesterday it was Savion Smith. Today it was Bobby Price. So it looks like they're trying to figure out that battle, continue to allow these guys to compete, see who maybe that could come out as. Also, keep in mind, there's no Jerry Jacobs, because he would probably be that, or he'd be above Will Harris if Jacobs was healthy. But what I think is interesting about this, when they talk about a slot position, they say, hey, Chase Lucas is still the third slot, but he looks good. He had good reps against Khalil Pimpleton, which I'm not gonna lie, if you can match Khalil Pimpleton from slot, you're gonna make the team. I'm just saying. I mean, look, Khalil Pimpleton is so darn shifty. If a guy can match that, which is rare even for a slot, I know they're supposed to be quicker, but if he can do that, that guy's making the team. So with that said, if Chase Lucas does continue to perform well, a guy that's a vet coming out of college, basically has a lot of experience, he could end up making the team. as a guy that they know can back up at slot for AJ Parker, and that could ultimately lead to Mike Hughes kind of pushing outside. But then I would wonder, okay, is Jerry Jacobs even going to get reps at nickel? They may just plug him at outside and leave him there. But if depending on when he comes back, if he doesn't come back soon and for training camp, I don't even know if they'll have an opportunity to give him reps at nickel. They may just continue to leave him at outside. So we'll see how that shakes out. But it's a very good problem to have because it sounds like we got some guys at corner, and we know we got guys at corner. That's why we did the breakdown video. It's a legit unit there. And then finally at safety, the rotation is Walker and Elliott starting 2. Backing them is Juju, Hughes, and Iffy. And the third string is Brady, Breeze, and Kirby. I think it's a little interesting that they have Juju Hughes above Brady Breeze. I think that's a little bit interesting because Brady Breeze did play last season a little bit for us, very little bit. But Juju Hughes is from the LA Rams, so that's a new addition. That one's interesting. Iffy, it makes sense to me, and I think what you're getting is we know that both the safeties, for the most part, every time Walker, Elliott, similar play styles, yes, but they're also both versatile, where you can be flexible, and you have to do it within this defense. I don't think the Lions wanted a guy that was like, hey, look, he's this, and this guy's this. So every play, you kind of know what they're doing. You want to have guys that are flexible to be able to do both and do well at both. You know, they don't have to be maybe outstanding in one area, but they have to be able to be flexible to do both, coming into the box, playing deep, possibly matching up on a tight end, all of those kind of things. I think that's what you're seeing with the starting 2. You have that with Iffy. He could be more of your strong safety because he can match up tight ends, things like that. And then when you get to Breeze and Kirby, you know, I see kind of the same thing there, right? I mean, obviously Kirby Joseph can play free safety, he can cover a lot of ground, cover a lot of field, but because of his man coverage upside, he could play a little bit of strong safety too, right? Match up on potential tight ends, things like that. So stay away from maybe the labels of strong safety, free safety, as much as it is just about having the flexibility to potentially do both. And then you start to get into third safety, sub package talk, when who's your, third safety potentially put out there. Iffy and Kirby seem to be very, to me, intriguing for that role. I'll wrap it up with some special teams talk because this is what it's about. We saved the best for last year. Kicker battle. Riley Patterson went 3 for 4. Austin Seibert went 4 for 4. They kicked from 29 yards, 34 yards, 38 yards, and 43 yards, according to DetroitLions.com. Patterson missed the first one, the short one, wide right, and he went 3 of 4, made the last 3. Meanwhile, Seibert went 4 for 4 on those same kicks. Also, on the special team side of things, they are saying that right now at the kick returner position, because yesterday they did punt returning, the kick returners that are working are Godwin and Benson, who seem to be rotating as the top guys. That's going to be something to keep an eye on because if Benson emerges and they feel like he can be the top kick returner, it puts Godwin in a very tough spot, in my opinion. So that's a battle. If Godwin keeps that role, it's going to be hard for the Lions for me to see them cutting him, which makes it tougher on Jermar Jefferson, tougher on some of these other backs. But that'll be something to keep an eye on. They're also saying Khalil Pimpleton's getting some reps in there, though, or Josh Johnson, but it sounds like those are the top 2. So that'll be something to keep an eye on for Khalil too, because if he can somehow get himself into a role there, gives him a much better shot to make the team. But then they're also saying that Cleve Raymond is taking very significant reps as an up back and kickoff returning, which to me is, again, very crucial because if he's your punt returner, he plays a crucial role on kick returning. Now all of a sudden, it's going to be very tough for him to not make the team, and I think he will make the team. And then Craig Reynolds, they're saying, is also singing at that same position as well. So Craig trying to find his role on special teams too. So again, it just seems like more and more he is a lock to make the team. Very interesting battles there. And I think when you get to special teams, it's more about finding out, are these guys making the team, because can they bring you flexibility to play different positions? That's what I'm always intrigued by. Those are my notes from day 2, or not my notes, the notes that I have gathered across from different sources. Again, open to public starting next week, so I will have notes from those practices. That's the plan. I'll have my notes from that. But until then, we should be live tonight, so make sure you check us out if you want to. If you want to say what's up, hey, go for it. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.